A word of caution to our audience. The story you are about to witness is real. The following program contains material that some may find deeply unsettling. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. I Follow You. This is how their love story appeared on social media. A seemingly perfect narrative where Phoenix Spencer Horn spoke of finding her soulmate in a postman named Euan Methven. It was a 2-year relationship that culminated in an act of pure evil. Here, in their apartment on the edge of Glasgow, he stabbed his 21-year-old girlfriend 20 times using 3 different knives, desecrating her naked body, and ultimately severing her head. She would not be discovered for days. November 18, 2024. East Kilbride, Scotland. When police officers breached the door of a top-floor apartment on Glenley that afternoon, they believed they were prepared for the worst. The 999 call itself had been chilling a man's voice, unnervingly calm, confessing to a killing and claiming he had blacked out during what he termed a psychotic episode. But absolutely nothing could have braced the responding officers for the horror that awaited them inside that unremarkable apartment. Concealed beneath a towel in the narrow hallway, they uncovered the savaged remains of 21-year-old Phoenix Spencer Horn, her head and limbs separated from her torso, her body left like garbage by the one person on earth she trusted above all others, the man she called her soulmate, the man her family had welcomed into their home with open arms. 2 blood-soaked knives lay at her side. A third was found, still wet, in the bathroom. But what elevates this case to another level of disturbing is that for 2 full days before that call, her killer moved about freely, driving her car, using her phone, and even texting her mother to maintain the illusion that Phoenix was still alive. And during those 48 hours, he searched for explicit material 170 times on her own device, while her body lay just feet away. This is the horrifying story of a relationship that ended in unimaginable brutality, and a trusted partner who transformed into a monster, and of a young woman whose bright future was snuffed out in the most cruel and depraved manner possible. Before we proceed, I must warn you again. What you are about to hear concerns a real crime that resulted in the violent death of a real person. This content may be deeply disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is, once again, strongly advised. Tonight, we delve into a nightmare so profoundly evil, it defies all comprehension. Please take a moment to subscribe and like this video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And now, we begin. To truly grasp the magnitude of what was lost on November 16, 2024, you must first understand who Phoenix Spencer Horn truly was, because she was more than a victim. She was more than just another statistic in the appalling toll of domestic violence. She was a daughter, a friend, a radiant light in the lives of all who knew her. And her story began long before that one terrible night. Phoenix Spencer Horn was born in Scotland to her mother, Alison Spencer, and was raised within a close-knit and loving family, a family that would later describe her as nothing less than the sunshine of their lives. Her name was not a random choice. Phoenix, the mythical bird that rises from its own ashes, a symbol of rebirth, resilience, and strength. Her parents chose this name with purpose, with hope, and with dreams for the person their daughter would grow to be. And Phoenix embodied that name in every conceivable way. From a very young age, she was the helper, the caregiver, the child who would notice when someone was struggling and immediately rush in to make things better. Family members remember a little girl who couldn't bear to see anyone left out or in pain. If a friend had a scraped knee, Phoenix was right there with a bandage. If someone was sitting by themselves, she would be the one to pull up a chair and sit beside them. Her bond with her mother, Alison, was exceptionally close. They were more than just mother and daughter. They were inseparable, talking every single day, sharing everything, laughing constantly, and always planning their next move together. It was the kind of bond people search a lifetime for. But for Phoenix and Alison, it was just natural, effortless. Anyone who knew Phoenix would tell you her smile was infectious, the kind that wouldn't just illuminate her face, but could somehow light up an entire room. She possessed this rare gift, an ability to make people truly feel seen, valued, and important. As Phoenix navigated her teenage years, that innate kindness only grew stronger. She went to the local high school, where she became known not for chasing popularity or status, but for her profound sense of empathy. She welcomed everyone, never passed judgment, and saw the good in people even when it was hidden from others. Friends would later recall how Phoenix would give you the shirt off her back, and they weren't speaking figuratively. If you needed something and Phoenix had it, She'd give it to you, no questions asked. It was during these formative years that Phoenix found her calling in the hospitality industry. It made perfect sense. She thrived on making people feel welcome, cared for, and appreciated. She worked part-time jobs all through high school, not just to help out her family and gain some independence, but because she truly loved the work. Brightening someone's day with a warm smile and great service, that was what drove Phoenix. Like any young person, she was full of dreams of seeing the world, building a life for herself, and maybe starting a family one day. The future lay before her, an open road of possibilities. By her early 20s, Phoenix had landed steady work as a waitress at various hotels and restaurants around the East Kilbride area. And she wasn't just doing a job, she was excelling. Her co-workers consistently described her as hardworking, dependable, and always, without fail, in a good mood. She built a reputation for genuinely caring about the customer experience. She made a point to remember the regulars' names, their orders, and even their stories. On social media, Phoenix offered glimpses into a life filled with joy and love. Photos with friends, captured moments of laughter, and of course, posts about her relationship with Euan Methven, the man she had met at a family party just 2 years prior. In one of her TikTok videos, she wrote about him, "Life is so much more beautiful and full of color with you." She called him her soulmate. Phoenix was a believer in second chances, in her ability to see the best in everyone, and in the power of love to overcome any obstacle. It was one of her most beautiful qualities, this unwavering faith in the goodness of people. But it would also prove to be her greatest vulnerability. She remained incredibly close with her family, texting her mom constantly, and never went long without checking in. That was just her nature, a person who nurtured connections and valued relationships above all else. On November 15, 2024, the day before her life was cut short, Phoenix visited with her mother. They laughed together and made plans for the future. Everything appeared perfectly normal, absolutely fine. On November 16, 2024, Phoenix went to her job. Her co-workers recall she was in great spirits, smiling, just like always. She finished her shift and headed for home, the apartment on Glenlee she shared with Euan Methven. Nothing seemed out of place. Nothing at all seemed different. At just 21 years old, Phoenix Spencer Horn had her whole life ahead of her. A life of dreams to fulfill, places to see, and love to give. Decades of a beautiful, brilliant existence that was rightfully hers. But within hours, it would all be stolen away by the one man she trusted most. Euan Methven was 27 years old. He was employed as a postal worker, a job that demands trustworthiness, reliability, and daily interaction with the community. By all outward appearances, he seemed completely ordinary. A normal job, a normal life, no criminal record, and no documented history of violence. There was nothing that would raise a single red flag. He'd met Phoenix at a family gathering, not on a dating app where a person's true self can be easily hidden. This wasn't some chance encounter. It happened at a family gathering, the most innocent, traditional start to any relationship. And for the next 2 years that they were a couple, Euan Methven wasn't just dating Phoenix. He was embraced, completely, into her family's inner circle, becoming a trusted member of the Spencer family. He was the man they shared holiday meals with, the man they included in their plans, the man they truly believed cared for their daughter. To Phoenix's family, he was the picture of a dependable, caring partner, exactly the kind of man they would have chosen for their daughter. They had no idea of the darkness he was capable of. The couple lived in a top-floor apartment on Glenlee in East Kilbride. To their neighbors, they appeared to be just another young couple, starting a life together. There were never any calls to the police from their address, no reports of domestic disturbances, no outward signs that anything was amiss. But just below that surface of normalcy, something twisted was taking hold. On November 16, 2024, while Phoenix was at her job serving customers, a job she genuinely loved, Methven sent her a text. He told her that her waitressing shifts were making him lonely. At first glance, it might sound like a simple case of a boyfriend missing his girlfriend, but a closer look reveals something more manipulative. He wasn't just saying he missed her, he was making his feelings her burden to carry. He was turning her job, her very independence, into the source of his own pain. And how did Phoenix respond? She apologized. It's a classic response for those caught in a web of control. Do whatever it takes to keep the peace, to manage the other person's emotions, to accept blame for things that are not your fault. This had nothing to do with concern, and it certainly wasn't passion. This was control cloaked in neediness, a toxic possession disguised as love. Investigators would later recognize this pattern of possessiveness, this simmering resentment of her independence, as the prelude to unthinkable violence. But at that moment, all Phoenix saw was the man she loved, seemingly showing his vulnerable side. She couldn't possibly have known that in just a few hours, that very same man would assault her with 3 separate knives inside the home they shared. In court, Judge Lord Matthews would look directly at Methven and say, "You were a trusted member of her family, but you betrayed that trust and robbed her of life in the cruelest way." Even Methven's own defense attorney, Tony Graham, conceded that to Phoenix's family and friends, his client would be seen as the very personification of evil. This leads to what is perhaps the most haunting question in this entire tragedy. How does a person hide that level of darkness for 2 whole years? How can someone capable of such brutality, such depravity, such methodical cruelty, successfully deceive not just one person, but an entire family? How do you share a life, a bed, a home with someone, and have no idea of the monster hiding just beneath the surface? This is the terrifying truth about domestic violence. It rarely announces its presence. Sometimes, it hides behind the most ordinary of faces. Sometimes, it wears the uniform of a mailman. And sometimes, it looks exactly like love, right up until the moment it doesn't. November 16th, 2024. It was a Saturday night that started out like any other, but would end in unimaginable horror. Let's reconstruct the events of that night, moment by moment, using court evidence, witness testimony, and Methven's own police statements. At 8 p.m., Euan Methven ordered takeout to be delivered to the apartment he shared with Phoenix on Glenlee. A delivery driver made his way to their top-floor apartment. He handed over the food, they exchanged a few pleasantries, and he left. That same driver would later give investigators a crucial piece of testimony. Euan Methven, at 8 o'clock that evening, did not appear drunk or otherwise intoxicated. Remember that detail. It will become critically important later. Soon after, Phoenix arrived home from her shift at the restaurant, the very shift Methven had texted her about. She had apologized for his loneliness, just as she always did. Now she was home, they were together again, and everything was supposed to be okay. At 9:37 p.m., Phoenix sent a text to her mother, Alison. It was just a few simple words, followed by 3 kisses. "We're eating dinner XXX. A casual, loving message. It was the kind of text Phoenix had sent dozens of times, the type of message that signals everything is normal, that all is well. "I love you. Talk tomorrow." Alison Spencer had no reason to be concerned. Her daughter was safe at home, having dinner with her boyfriend. This would be the last genuine message Alison would ever receive from her daughter. Phoenix Spencer Horn had no inkling that these were her final moments of normalcy. No idea that in a matter of hours, the man sitting across from her would become her killer. Around midnight, the downstairs neighbor living directly below the couple's apartment heard something unsettling, a loud noise from above. Then came the sound of hurried footsteps, rapid movement, the distinct sounds of chaos erupting upstairs. Methven's fitness tracker, the type worn by millions to count steps and monitor activity, registered a sudden, dramatic spike. Intense physical exertion, an elevated heart rate, violent movement. What unfolded next in that top-floor apartment is almost too horrific to put into words, but it must be said, because Phoenix's story, her real story, the unvarnished truth of what was done to her, demands to be told. Euan Methven attacked Phoenix Spencer Horn with 3 separate knives. Not 1, 3. He stabbed her 20 times. 10 of those wounds were inflicted on her face. Her face, the face that held the infectious smile her family loved so much. The face that lit up a room. The face of a 21-year-old woman, who should have had decades of life ahead of her. Other stab wounds struck her chest and her torso. It was a frenzied, brutal, and sustained assault. The fatal wound pierced her chest. But Methven did not stop there. He strangled her. As if the stabbing rampage wasn't enough, he put his hands around her throat to ensure she could not possibly survive. But even that wasn't the end of what Methven did to Phoenix. In an act of depravity that continues to shock seasoned investigators and prosecutors who have witnessed countless atrocities, Methven decapitated Phoenix Spencer Horn. He severed her head from her body, and then he attempted to dismember her, trying to remove her limbs from her torso, systematically taking apart the body of the woman who had called him her soulmate. He would later state to police in his characteristically calm manner, "I tried to dismember her. I moved her from the bath and put her there." Phoenix's mutilated body was left in the hallway, covered with a towel. 2 blood-soaked knives lay beside her. A third bloodied knife sat in the bathroom, waiting to be found. The woman whose name symbolized rebirth had been literally torn asunder by the man she had trusted the most. Now, this is where Methven's story begins to unravel under scrutiny. He would later claim, when he finally dialed 911 a full 2 days later, that he'd experienced a psychotic break induced by cocaine, alcohol, and steroids, that he had totally blacked out and couldn't remember what happened. But the evidence tells a dramatically different story. The delivery driver saw him at 8 p.m., just hours before the attack, and described him as completely sober. There were no signs of intoxication, no indication he was under the influence of anything. And Methven's actions in the 48 hours following Phoenix's death don't suggest someone in a drug-induced blackout. They suggest someone fully aware, entirely conscious, and coldly calculating, someone who knew exactly what he had done and was desperately trying to cover it up. Sunday, November 17, 2024. Phoenix Spencer Horn lay dead in her own home, her body mutilated, decapitated, and discarded in the hallway of the apartment she had made into a home. And Euan Methven? He carried on as if nothing at all had happened. He took Phoenix's red Corsa, her car, and drove around East Kilbride, running errands, moving through the world as a man simply going about his weekend, while the woman he murdered decomposed just miles away. He scrolled constantly through Phoenix's phone. A detailed forensic analysis would later reveal precisely what he was viewing from 8 a.m. until 6:30 p.m. On Sunday. Methven was accessing pornographic websites, not just once, not a dozen times, but 170 times. Just let that sink in. All while Phoenix's body lay in that apartment, while her family was desperately waiting to hear from her, and her mother was expecting her usual check-in texts. Euan Methven spent more than 10 hours viewing explicit content on his murdered girlfriend's phone. He also made several attempts to buy cocaine, contacting dealers, trying to score, all while living his life with a grotesque normality that is simply beyond comprehension. Meanwhile, his next-door neighbor, Tony Brown, started to notice something strange, a foul odor seeping through the connecting walls of the apartments. She would later tell reporters, "There was a terrible smell in my kitchen, right where our walls join." She had no idea that just feet away, her neighbor was lying dead, or that the smell was the scent of decomposition, and that a murderer was carrying on with his life on the other side of that wall. Brown would later state, "It's horrific. It sends chills down my spine, just thinking about it. It's insane to think I was living next door to a monster like that. What scares me most is knowing she was lying there, and I was right here, completely oblivious." But perhaps the most bone-chilling part of these 48 hours involves Phoenix's own mother. Alison Spencer was waiting to hear from her daughter. They texted every single day, often multiple times. It was their routine, their connection, their normal. And she did start receiving texts, messages she believed were coming from Phoenix. "Hey, sorry I just woke up. XXX. It was Methven, typing on Phoenix's phone, impersonating her, and maintaining the fiction that his girlfriend was alive and well. He sent several messages over the weekend, each one a twisted performance, each a meticulously calculated lie. Alison responded, believing she was talking to her daughter, making plans, sharing the ordinary details of her day. She had no reason to suspect the man her family had put their trust in, the man they had welcomed into their lives so completely. Every text was a knife to the heart, though Alison didn't know it yet. While she believed her daughter was fine, just busy, just living her life, Phoenix's body was growing colder in that hallway. These are not the actions of a person in a drug-fueled blackout. This is not someone who can't recall what happened. This is deliberate, calculated, and cold-blooded deception. Methven knew exactly what he had done. He was buying himself time, delaying the inevitable, trying to figure out his next move. His own words to the police following his arrest would confirm his awareness. "I guess this is what my next 25 years look like." He knew, from the very beginning. He knew exactly what he had done and exactly what was coming for him. On Monday, November 18th, around noon, after 48 hours of aimlessly driving around, texting Phoenix's mother, looking at pornography, and attempting to buy cocaine, Euan Methven finally made the call. He dialed 999, the U.K.'s emergency number. His words to the operator were chilling in their casualness. "I had a psychotic break and killed my wife." He claimed he had been trying to work up the courage to call, as if courage was what was needed, as if this was some difficult but noble act. He began to spin his story. We were just messing around. I'm on steroids and was using cocaine and alcohol. I think there was something else mixed in. It was effing horrible, he said, then speaking in the third person, claimed, he totally blacked out through the whole thing. Can't remember what happened. When transferred to a senior police officer, Methven said simply, I just want to go to jail. Then added, I've been out of my mind. I can't remember what happened. I've been driving around all weekend, just driving around all weekend. A casual admission that he had been mobile, active, and conscious for 2 full days since the murder. Police officers raced to the Glenley apartment. They forced entry, bracing themselves for what they might find inside. And there, in the hallway, they discovered the body of Phoenix Spencer Horn, which had been brutalized and decapitated, partially covered by a towel. 2 blood-soaked knives are found beside her, a third discovered in the bathroom. The scene confirms the most horrific possibilities suggested by the 999 call, and then some. Later, in his jail cell, Methven makes another chillingly detached statement. I guess this is what my next 25 years look like. The words just hang there, cold, distant, and almost resigned. Not shock, not a trace of horror for what he had done, not an ounce of grief for the life he'd just extinguished. It was just a calculation, counting the years ahead, as if Phoenix Spencer Horn, the woman he once called his soulmate, the woman whose mother had put her faith in him, the woman he had stabbed 20 times before taking her head, was simply the price of doing business. The investigation was only just beginning, but one thing was already painfully clear. For Euan Methven, Phoenix's brutal murder wasn't a tragedy. It was just an obstacle. On June 17, 2025, a full 7 months after Phoenix's murder, Euan Methven appears before the High Court in Glasgow. He pleads guilty to murder, and to attempting to obstruct justice. There's no trial, no defense. He admits to everything, but offers no explanation that could possibly satisfy anyone. July 14, 2025, sentencing day. Judge Lord Matthews calls it a dreadful crime, an appalling and absolutely horrible crime. Speaking directly to Methven, he states, you robbed her of all dignity in death, by decapitating her and trying to dismember her in an attempt to cover your tracks. The way you treated this innocent, young woman after her death meant that her family was denied even the small comfort of saying goodbye to her. The sentence is life in prison, with a minimum of 23 years before any consideration for parole. The judge remarks that he's rarely seen such an outpouring of grief as what was expressed in the victim impact statements from Phoenix's family, saying, I have rarely read such outpourings of grief as are contained in the victim impact statements from her family, who have endeavored to put into words what can never truly be encapsulated, the sadness and the deep sense of loss they all feel, and will continue to feel because of what you did. The way you treated this innocent young woman after her death meant that her family did not even have the comfort of saying goodbye to her. I know that nothing I can say or do, and no punishment I can inflict, will ever be enough. Phoenix's family was present in that courtroom, including Alison Spencer, the mother who received those deceptive text messages, who was made to believe her daughter was alive for days after she was already gone, now sitting face to face with the man who had destroyed their world. Their pain is immeasurable. They were robbed of the chance to say goodbye properly, to hold Phoenix one final time, to give her the dignified farewell that every person deserves. Even Methven's own attorney acknowledged that the family would see his client as the very personification of evil. Methven wrote a letter to the judge, claiming, I know how loved Phoenix was, and how she made her family complete. I cannot believe I have taken her from them. But his words ring hollow. His brutal actions speak far louder than any written apology ever could. In the aftermath, a fundraising page for Phoenix's funeral raised thousands of pounds from a community utterly shattered by her loss. In an extraordinary act of grace, her family chose to donate much of it to a women's aid charity. Glasgow Women's Aid posted a powerful tribute. Her name, Phoenix, now signifies more than loss. It stands for action, for a commitment to change, for a refusal to let her story fade into silence. Phoenix should still be here today, but her legacy is now one of lifting others up. The charity vowed to use the donation to protect other women, to carry on Phoenix's legacy in the way she would have wanted. Detective Chief Inspector Susie Kearns spoke, on behalf of the entire investigation team. Violence such as this is never acceptable in our communities, and we will work tirelessly to prevent it, to make certain that those accountable face the consequences. Phoenix Spencer Horn was only 21 years old with an entire lifetime of aspirations stretching out before her, so many places to see, so much love to give, and countless memories waiting to be made. Her mother remembered her as the very light of their family. Her friends knew her as an angel. Then, on a frigid November night in 2024, inside the home she shared with someone she believed she could trust, that brilliant light was savagely snuffed out. Euan Methven stripped Phoenix of everything: her life, her dignity, and her entire future. But the one thing he could never steal was her name. Phoenix, a name that symbolizes rising from the ashes, a testament to resilience and rebirth. And in a profound sense, through the vital work of Women's Aid and the awareness her story now generates, Phoenix does rise again, though not in the way her family had ever hoped for, and certainly never in the way they wanted. Her legacy, however, is a stark reminder that domestic violence can hide behind the most ordinary-looking doors, that trust itself can be twisted into a weapon, that the greatest danger can come from the person lying beside you, and that we have a duty to never stop fighting for those who are unable to protect themselves. Rest in peace, Phoenix Spencer Horn. Your name will never be forgotten.